when it comes to the second season of Ted, I'm going to be honest and say I had a lot of fun watching. Firstly, I really thought this was hilarious. Each and every episode had a moment which had me laughing in tears, whether it be the odd conversations between Ted and John, Matty and his odd theories, or just random gags that are in there for no other reason than just to make you laugh. And honestly, they succeeded in every way possible. I really enjoyed the fact that as this is the second season, they're putting more shock humour into it, whether it being Ted wearing a particular toy or graphic nudity which just comes out of nowhere. All of this I really thought was quite cool to see, as it's been given this new form of freedom that I feel like the first season was allowed to tease, whether it be the drug humour, the drug usage and the foul language, but I felt like this was able to take it up a notch. And then what I really loved is the creativity, as whilst the first season was more for character structure and see how they became like they are in the films, and go through typical teenage antics such as using porn, smoking drugs, and trying to get with women, whilst in this season they go a bit more out there with the ideas, whether it be Ted getting involved with a married woman, playing D&D for drugs, or just making a fake newspaper so their father doesn't have a heart attack. Ideas which sound a bit ludicrous, but also would never really get touched on traditional sitcoms because of studio interference or limitations budget wise. And that's another thing I really loved, is you can definitely tell they were given a bigger budget in this series, as you get to see more visual type of stuff like Ted and John reacting and seeing hallucinations whilst on magic mushrooms. Then you see an AI Bill Clinton in this series, but what's the most amount, and you can really tell that they got a bigger budget, is in episode 3 when playing D&D. This is because of the costumes, this is because of the sets, and what they also have is CGI monsters, and it's actually quite cool to see them go so above and beyond for creative detail. And they really did need to do this, as because we know Ted costs so much, I think audiences would have understood if they cheapened out on this, but instead they really went for the creative detail, and that's something to really respect. In this series, the friendship between John and Ted is still strong as ever, and I really enjoyed that. Ted is willing to be more considerate towards John, not trying to hurt his feelings, and puts him first even though it doesn't look like it's going his way. And then what's even more of a stronger bond is that even though John has struck out but Ted has been given some sort of luck, he's all for praising Ted and actually wanting him to succeed, even though he would rather be in the position that he is in. What's also interesting is, in comparison to the first season, we see that Ted shows a bit more emotion. He's not just a comedic sidekick, he gets a bit emotional, especially when we see that he gets involved with an older woman and sadly that relationship ends. We actually see him, of all characters, crying, being very sad, and it's really surprising but in a good way. In this series we also get to explore the other family members, whether it be Blair, and we learn about the disdain she has for her father and why, but also the relationship between her father and his brother Matty, and how Matty is, if anything, the victim of the relationship. He is the bullied person in that relationship, although he'll never admit it. And then with Sue, we sadly see this character take up alcoholism in episode 4 after feeling ignored and unloved by her husband. And it's interesting as you could slowly see this go on from the first episode all the way to the 4th, and it's interesting that we see somewhat a small plot get bigger and bigger up until it implodes on episode 4. And lastly, I enjoyed how little awkward moments appeared in this show, making replay value much easier now, and because of removing it, the show feels like it could flow better because of that. When it comes to the last episode, I will be honest and say I had a fun time watching it, seeing John and Ted get creative, all the while just to make sure their father doesn't hear some negative news but puts him in his own bubble at the same time. It's very funny, it's very strange, I really loved it. But I do hope that we get to see more of this show and that the closing narration is more used as humour than an actual way to close off the show. Now, while that's all well and good, there are still some issues I have with the show. Firstly, I felt Matty in the first season was unlikable to an extent, but he made you laugh with his absurd ideas. But in this series, I feel like he was even more unlikable, and it progressed even worse. And when you think he may become a bit more likeable after the events of episode 4, sadly they reset his character and he just becomes even more obnoxious, up to the point in episode 6 where he is unbelievably annoying and you kind of just hate the character, which I don't think as a sitcom you really want to do. But Sue, I really enjoyed her character, even though, yeah, she's been beaten down by Matty in each and every episode. She still has this positive energy about her, and she even gets her own episode. But sadly, I felt like that episode felt more of a John Hughes 80s movie type of vibe, if anything else, and it felt very cheesy to me. She was going into prison, she was the new girl, and I thought this would be a great way to see her character become toughened up, and that way maybe we see her tackling Matty in a different way. But sadly, again, like I said, it felt very cheesy and I felt very disappointed by it, as she was able to fix everyone's problems in the prison. Really? That's just me personally. I was hoping, admittedly, for her to come out like Meg from Family Guy when she went to prison, but alas. And then, whilst I did say each and every episode had a lot of great hilarious moments, I will say the weakest episodes are 4 and 6, as I felt like Ted and John got thrown to the sidelines in these episodes, and that their side plots were weak at best. And they do focus more on the drama side of things, which I'm okay with in most parts, as long as there's a bound full of humour to balance along with it, but sadly there isn't. And then episode 6 to me felt a bit unnecessary, as well, yes, abortion is a very serious topic. Seth MacFarlane's already tackled this before, and I felt that this episode didn't do anything new except give more vocal points to pro-life people. And what's really sad is the only character promoting pro-choice is Blair herself. Ted and John aren't really there to stand up for pro-choice. They do have a joke of mocking what pro-life people believe abortionists and people who work with abortions are, but that's really their only role in this. And what's even more sad is even Sue is against Blair, and whilst, yes, like I said, there are quite a few points poking jabs at the pro-life community, it's sad that there's more pro-life vocal presence in this episode than there is pro-choice. Overall, I really did enjoy this series. I think it had a great start with great hilarious gags, hysterical conversations, and just odd moments in the show. And whilst, yes, I feel that there's a few bad apples, it definitely doesn't deter me from replay value, which I think is much better in comparison to the first series. Overall, is it good? I'm going to be honest and say it's great. Rating wise, I give it an 8 out of 10. Now, would I rewatch it? Yes. I feel like on a first watch basis I had a hysterical time. I bet going back into it I'm going to find new jokes. It's Seth MacFarlane, he can do that a lot. Some of the jokes might not have hit first time, and I bet on a rewatch it will. Now when it comes to recommendations, of course I recommend the 2 Ted films. I personally think Ted 2 is really good, no matter what Ian McKellen or Seth MacFarlane himself thinks, but that's just me. I really enjoy those films to see what they are like as adults and the adventures they endure. Because of the relationship between a teddy bear and a human, it reminded me of Futurama with Fry and Bender, a robot and a human. And obviously, whilst their relationship is somewhat different and the style of humour of that show is vastly different, their bond is still the same, and that's what I really enjoyed about it. And then, because of that, I'd also recommend American Dad because of Steve and Roger, although I would say they're akin more similar to Ted and John, because like John, Steve is always asking for advice, trying to get advice for getting laid, drugs, sex, and all sorts of other type of situations that you get with American Dad. Like my review for the first series, I would recommend F is for Family, as both Matty and Frank Murphy have similar vibes with their anger, their somewhat treatment of the family, and their right-wing views. But the main difference between the characters is that Frank Murphy is likeable. They show him to be quite aggressive, say this quite dark stuff, but you know he cares for his family, while Matty it's not so much. And essentially, F is for Family is basically seeing Matty in a likeable presence. So if you enjoy a character like Matty but you want him to be a bit more likeable, F is for Family is for you. Those are my recommendations. This is my review for season 2 of Ted. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed, please like and subscribe, but most importantly, thank you and have a nice day.